Your movie, my movie, their movie, our movie. Your movie, my movie, their movie, our movie. Your movie, my movie, their movie, our movie. Yeah!
Hi, welcome to Your Movie, My Movie with Dan and Steve.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Steve. And with us is guest host Sierra.
I'm Sierra.
This is a podcast where one of us picks a movie to watch and discuss. In this episode, we're talking about one of Dan's picks, the 2016 movie Captain Fantastic. We will be talking about spoilers, so if you want to watch the movie first, now's the time to do so. But before we talk about the movie, Dan, who would you recommend this movie for?
It's kind of a long list, I guess. But mainly antisocial punks and, Marxist emos,
Okay.
or I don't know anything about Marxism, but you get the idea. Anyone anti-establishment, anyone who had a strange upbringing. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Would you recommend it to people who are anti-establishment to show them how wrong they are?
It's funny you mention that, because I watched this with my parents the first time. And, my mom liked it, even though, she's hardcore evangelical Christian. She realizes it's a good movie when she sees one. So,
Yeah.
I guess, if they can stand it, they should watch it.
Okay. I would recommend this movie to people who never want to have kids and want to feel validated in that.
That's hilarious.
That's exactly right.
That's fair.
Yeah, you want a good reason not to have kids? Watch this movie. This is why. Yeah.
All right.
Well, what about you, Sierra? Who would you recommend this movie to?
I feel like my thoughts are less well orchestrated.
That's fine.
My first thought was for the van life girlies.
Yes.
Oh.
Van life girlies will love this film. The people who fantasize about living off the grid, not necessarily anti-establishment, but the ones that just they have a really rough day on a Wednesday night at their job, and then they go home, they're like, God, if I could just grow corn,
Yeah.
This would probably get them into that fantasy and realize, or I guess sort of see the pros and cons of it potentially.
Well, no, that's true, because that's one of the themes about this movie, is I imagine everybody has, a fantasy of just getting the fuck away from the modern world and all the problems that come with it. Mm-hmm. And, this movie shows what happens when you do that. And, it's not like you solve your problems. You just have to deal with different problems.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, yeah.
This movie, I guess, I may get slightly personal on this episode.
Oh, I'm going to get very personal in this episode for sure.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
But you want to do just a quick rundown of the plot?
Yeah. So, quick summary of the plot is this movie starts in the Pacific Northwest, and there's a family that basically lives off the grid in the forests of the Pacific Northwest, and they have how would you put it?
They have
not
a little
compound.
Camp.
A camp.
It's like a camp. It's like their home. They have buildings that they made and stuff. But it's their home clan area. It's their camp.
Yeah.
That's where they live.
And we see a man played by Viggo Mortensen, Ben, and he has 6 children, and he's training them how to live off the grid in the wilds, how to hunt and fend for themselves. But he also is homeschooling them and teaching them Marxist theory and quantum mechanics.
Yeah.
And so what happens is we find out that their mother was in a hospital and she's been there for months. And so Ben drives into town to call and find out, what's going on with her. And then he finds out that she killed herself by slitting her wrists, and that she was in the hospital because she was suffering from bipolar disorder. And so she killed herself at the hospital. And I guess her family was watching out for her while she was in the hospital.
Yeah.
And so Ben has to go back to his children. Well, Ben is told by his father that, they're going to keep her body there, and that
By
they're
her
going to...
father, yeah.
Yeah. Her father, played by Frank Langella, famous for, oh God, he's such a great actor. He was in famously of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, playing Skeletor.
Oh my gosh, no way, really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And so he says that, he's going to give his daughter a Christian burial, but Ben knows that, that's not what she wants. What she wanted, she was a Buddhist, so what she wanted was to be cremated and then have her ashes poured in the nearest public toilet. And so then the plot of that movie is them going from their, off the grid camp into civilization, driving to their mother's funeral so that they can make sure that she's buried in the way that she wanted to be buried.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is, that's can be very important, to people. I know it's important to me, because the way that I want my funeral to be is I do not want a pastor to preside over my funeral.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I've been to a few funerals, and to everyone that I've been to, they were presided over by priests or preachers. And basically what they say is, I'm sorry the person you love is dead. Get saved by Jesus.
Essentially.
And give me tithes. And, when your family is mourning, I don't want them to be exploited in that way. I feel very strongly about that. And so I should, amend my will to do this, where I want the executor of my estate to hire a stand-up comedian to preside over my funeral, and then make fun of everybody I know one last time.
Are you gonna write the roast yourself?
Yeah, I might have to do some in jokes. Yeah, I might have to spill some, pour some tea and spill some dirt.
Oh, love it.
That's genius.
Yeah, that's how I want it done. How do you want your funeral to go?
I don't know. I mean, I've made like a playlist, so like I think I want everyone to like sit down and listen to music, and I'm gonna make them listen to all of my favorite songs, and I've carefully cultivated to like, make them happy and then make them die with tears.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I want it to be like. I don't want it to be like... Well, no, I mean, they can be sad, but it's like a time to process and a time to hang out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess.
What about you, Sierra?
I think about this a lot, actually. Like, a morbid amount. And I have, like, my whole life. I don't want open casket. There's something about... I don't know if it's only Black people, but they love doing open caskets. And I've been to 3. And good God, they're terrifying. However, I say that. But, like, I want it to be closed casket. But, like, if someone steps too close to my casket, I want to, like, spring out, like, those, like, spirit Halloween things. Like, ah! I do want it to be, like, a celebration of life, It's going to be very closed. I'm going to have a select few people attending.
All right.
Because I feel like even in death, I should have a lot of control over my life. I'm a Virgo. It kind of just happens.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be in a mahogany casket.
Okay.
I want a bunch of baby's breath flowers.
Okay.
I want everyone to wear either blue or yellow. I want like a powder blue and a canary yellow. Don't know why. Those are just the perfect colors for me. I want everyone to say at least 3 things that they could not fucking stand about me, just to get it off their chests, so they don't have to like gossip afterwards. I can hear you even in the death.
Even in the death.
And like Daniel, like I have multiple playlists that I've been curating for forever. I have like a joke playlist and like a legit playlist for my funeral, and someone gets to, probably you, gets to like flip a coin.
I'll be dead. Sorry, bro.
Darn it. I'll get someone else then. I'll get next in line. They're going to flip a coin to see which playlist they play. And it's going to blare. It's not even going to be like a small little in the background. It's going to be blasting. Mm-hmm. It's going to be great.
You have thought about this.
Oh my God. Yeah. Ever since I like understood what death was, which is a hilarious story, which I won't tell now. Okay. I've just like thought about the way I would want to be properly like laid to rest, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Great.
I think I want to be cremated. I don't know.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're done, right? Yeah, we're done. Sorry.
You can go on if you want.
Okay. I mean, I want to be there for my funeral.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's not possible.
Yeah. Yeah. So, on that downer note, let's talk more about this movie.
I really liked this movie. I think I liked it more the second time.
Yeah. This movie is very evocative. It's like hugely evocative, for sure. Yeah. It gets you in the feels for sure. So yeah, let's talk about this.
Yeah, we've got the plot out of the way. Now
movie.
we can just talk about what we liked and what we thought about it.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. So yeah.
Can I talk about the opening scene real quick? Just to get
opening image.
Opening image was like a forest, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was establishing shot of the Pacific Northwest forest, and then it goes to the forest, and then we see a deer, eating leaves. And then we see this young man covered in mud kill the deer, Wait. Come on. You go. It's your move.
Sees the deer. We see the deer, the beautiful light shining in the deer across the fur. It's beautiful. And like the deer hears a branch break, looks over. There's, a face covered in mud. Just like it closes his eyes too. He closes his eyes so the deer wouldn't like see him or something. I don't know. And then the deer gets a little closer, jumps out, like slices the neck of the deer, and just like tackles it. Yeah.
And then we see all these other the teens and younger children come out all covered in mud too, camouflaged. So they come out and join this area, and then we see Ben, played by Viggo Mortensen, an older man, and he takes the knife and I think he cuts the heart out. Yeah, cuts the heart, gives a piece to Bo. His name is Bo, and feeds it to him, and he says, "You were a child and now you're a man," and so Bo then eats that piece of the heart. That's very traditional. It's called being bloodied.
Today the boy is dead, and in his place is a man.
Yeah. And when you hunt for the first time and get your first kill, you eat the part of the heart raw. The tradition is you eat part of the heart raw, and then you're bloodied. And so that way you taste the blood of the thing you kill, and so that forms that spiritual connection. And it's also a rite of passage because you're good enough to hunt your own kill. So that's what that was about. And then it cuts to them bathing in the river their clothes are still on, but they're washing the mud off. And then they go to their camp, and we see how everything works basically. And that night they get a fire going, and everybody's reading, and they're reading like all this high level text.
Yeah, like the Brothers Karamazov. Yeah. Like I don't remember all the books, but like all the Russian and like Shakespeare and like all that stuff.
Yeah. And one of the girls is reading about quantum mechanics, and Ben's like, "Hey, how's that going?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'm getting it." And this way. Okay, well then you can do a presentation on quantum entanglement tomorrow.
Yeah, he didn't sound nearly that nice either, though.
Yeah. And she was like 13 years old. And so they're all reading, and then Ben gets his guitar out and starts strumming it, and then Bo gets his guitar out and starts strumming it, and then the tween boy Rel, he has like a box.
It's a cajon. Yeah, it's like a box drum.
Okay, a box drum that he sits on. And it's so funny because they're playing the guitar, playing this one tune.
It's like a very, beautiful melody.
Yeah.
Soft.
Yeah, and Rel just immediately starts, banging out this beat to a totally different song.
And he looks aggressively at his dad, Ben.
Yeah. foreshadowing.
For sure.
And then, you know, they change their song to what he's beating to, and then they all play a song, and they're hooting and howling, banging the cymbals and playing the harmonica. And it was so funny because there's a skit show called The Kids in the Hall, and one of their regular skits is about this band, and a garage band basically. Mm-hmm. And one of the characters is the drummer, and he's like, "Hey, I'm the drummer. I'm the soul of the band." It's like, yeah, the drummer's gonna pick which song's gonna play. so that's what I was thinking about. And so let's get on to the things. Like, do you have anything to chime in about now?
I mean, I was homeschooled, so I was homeschooled until my junior year. Mm-hmm. And so I relate a lot to this movie because this movie is about everything. It's about society. It's about Western civilization. It's about the United States and the world in general, how we operate and live in a society, or if we choose to live outside of a society. Yeah. It's about, you know, the world, but it's also a lot about family. So, I mean, just from the education, I'm going to talk about that right now, I guess. Like, I think growing up, I had a better education in some ways than a lot of kids around me that went to public school. Because I went to public school as a junior, and I didn't learn much at all for the 2 years I was there. I learned a lot in what I was interested in. Everything else, I learned as little as possible and dumped it as soon as the class was over. Right. I learned a lot in theater classes because I was interested in those, and I learned a lot in English because I was interested in those. But I think I was taught a lot of things that were really interesting growing up. A lot of it was really strange, and definitely not what kids in public school would be learning. A lot of it probably isn't even true.
Well, let me chime in here because I was put into a Christian private school affiliated with a Southern Baptist church. I went there from kindergarten until 7th grade when it closed. And then I was put into another private school. And that private school was created when segregation got struck down.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So they said, in order to get into this school, you have to pay for it. Which, you know, the black families at the time couldn't, and that's how they handled that.
Goodness
at the
gracious.
time. Yeah. And my father also graduated from that school too. Mm-hmm. That particular school. Lovely. So that's growing up the Glades, people.
Oh,
yeah. In the Glades.
So, you know, talking about stuff that's not true. Yeah, I had, you know, so growing up, everything that I learned was very colored, you know, by Christianity and how people as Christians are supposed to learn things. Mm-hmm. But, you know, it's so funny because it's like business people don't follow that. No. Let's say propaganda of evangelicals is, you know, that's not what scientists do. And so like there's a cultural struggle going on between science and Christianity. But what, you know, evangelical Christianity is not talking about is the difference between, you know, Christianity and capitalism. In fact, what's gone on is capitalism has basically taken over evangelical Christianity with prosperity gospel. Mm-hmm. You know, because I remember growing up and being told, hey, it's important to have Sundays off so you can go to church, and it's important to spend time with your family. But, you know, our evangelical Christian leaders, they're not pushing that. You know, they're saying, if you're poor, it's because you don't give God enough money. Mm-hmm. And so you need to work harder and give God more of your hard-earned money, and then the riches will come back to you, which is, you know, fuck that. Yeah. You know?
That's not exactly my experience, but
with prosperity gospel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't relate to none of that. I lived with my mom, and like I'm more acquainted with her side of the family, and her parents and her brothers and everything. They're all like kind of diehard Catholics. At least her mom and her dad are diehard Catholics. My mom's like diet Catholic.
Okay.
Like Catholic when it's important, I guess. Whenever that is.
Right.
And so I had to do CDC, which is like, Catholic school, Bible school, whatever, when I was, first grade to third grade. I never paid attention, didn't care. We had coloring books for like Bible coloring books. That's all the fuck I did. I didn't do anything else. I wasn't paying attention to anything. And if I were to like hear anything from the Bible, I needed context. Like I was that annoying kid. I was like, so why is that? And why? And they kind of just gave up on me and stopped sending me to CDC. But I went to school with a lot of kids who were also in CDC with me. And as we like went up the grades and everything, I realized like they were completely different than how I was, like in the way that they were taught the world, the way that they were starting to understand the world, and even understanding like what we're being taught in school. Like when it came to science classes, those kids, like their parents pretty much pick them up for early lunch. Like it was just like not even trying to like commingle with those two ideas at all.
Yeah.
So I never personally had experiences like this, but I've seen like as outside perspective. Sort of.
You're the cousins in the movie.
Yeah, for sure. I like to think a little less ignorant, but for sure. For sure I'm the cousin.
Yeah. But like I like watching that scene. Let's talk about that scene real quick.
Yeah.
Okay.
That scene was insane because like I'm stupid. I'm really stupid. And I don't know a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very like pretentious, but I'm also ignorant.
Right.
And
Period.
Well, just to make it clear, I'm not saying that you're stupid. It's just that you can relate to the greater culture. You
Yes.
you weren't isolated, to the greater culture like, Ben's children were. That's what I was getting at.
Yeah. I think you're gonna call me stupid on your podcast.
Well, I just want to make sure it's also for our listeners. So, yeah. So, but
I felt like called out because like I barely know what the Bill of Rights is, and like I don't even know if I've read the whole Constitution, and like I basically spent most of my life avoiding politics in general and things like that, because if you talked about politics, you didn't have friends.
Yeah,
basically, or at least what I was taught about politics. If I said that, I didn't have friends.
I understand. Well, I mean, it's so funny because you and I, Dan, and even Sierra, we're talking about how religion is isolating, and religion tends to be very right wing, but that's not what happens in this movie. They're isolated because of their radical leftist ideology. Right. There's that one scene where Bo and Ben are at the store. Yeah, and they're at the store, and I think they make like bird houses and stuff for a little bit of money.
They're in town to get supplies,
right?
And so Ben, the dad, and Bo, the oldest son, are in town. Ben is selling the wares that they've made, which are like birdhouses out of wood and stuff.
Yeah, and these 3 teenage girls come out of the store as Bo tries to come in. And, Bo just has no idea how to talk to them. He has no idea how to relate to them. You can tell he thinks they're cute. And, they might even talk to him back, but, there's just no common ground there. And that's the running theme for him throughout this movie. And so, the girls, eventually just, walk by. And Ben's like, yeah, go on, talk to them. He's like, what am I going to talk to him about? Marxist theology? And he's like, well, Marxist theology, you know that stuff. That's very smart. And he's like, yeah, I'm not a Marxist, Dad. Well, talking about, being a Trotskyite. I'm not a Trotskyite. Stalinist is what a Trotskyite calls him out. So, that also, sets the scene for, that's where their ideology is coming from. And, it's just so interesting because it's like, using religion is the easier way out, but this is like, the reverse. Talking about, radical leftist politics, what is it? Power to the people, stick it to the man.
Yeah.
You know, instead of celebrating Christmas, they celebrate Noam Chomsky Day.
That killed me.
I don't even know who that is.
He's like a leftist liberal writer, and you know, he talks, you know, about the dangers of fascism and stuff. So
That's crazy.
yeah. So I thought that was really interesting how they subverted that. Instead of going with religion, going with leftist politics.
Yeah. So the education was crazy. Like, I don't know how much, like, yeah, there's just a lot, there's so much to talk about.
No Esperanto.
What was that about? Like, what is Esperanto? I don't even know what that is.
So Esperanto, it was a language made up in, I think in like the 1920s, you know, like when the first League of Nations happened. It was after the Great War. I believe, I could be totally wrong. This is what I remember. But yeah, it was like a new language that everybody could learn, and it was meant to unify mankind. But of course, nobody else but like idealists and utopians, you know, learned it. So I think what happened was, you know, just those two girls knew it, and none of the other kids. And so that's why I said, no, we can only speak languages that everybody else can speak.
Yeah. Two girls were complaining about their dad in the back seat of the bus in Esperanto.
Yeah.
And he was like, stop talking in Esperanto. No one else, they have like these rules and these traditions, and, you know, that is apparently one of them.
Yeah, and then they talk back and forth in German, in Chinese.
Mandarin,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, you know, there's that one girl, and while they're, you know, he's driving the bus, you know, he's like, well, what are you reading? You know, I'm reading Lolita. Well, that wasn't on the list. Well, I'm reading ahead. Well, what do you think about it? Oh, it's interesting. Oh, Daddy, she said interesting. Interesting is a non-word.
Yes, interesting is a non-word. I love that.
That's how I wanted to open this show. I was going to say, oh, this movie's interesting. Oh, wait, that's a non-word.
And that line, I don't know, it brought back a far memory when I was in, probably either the end of elementary school or the beginning of middle school, cannot remember. But I was in an English class, and we had to start learning how to write like reviews on things. So we'd watch a movie and we had to write a review on it. And, you know, kids would be like, oh, it was really good or very good or interesting. And my teacher would basically be like, it's a non-word, or like elaborate on that. And she would like highlight if they put like really or very or interesting in it. And she'd be like, I need you to figure out what you want to say here.
Yeah.
And so I completely forgot about that. And like hearing that, I was like, whoa.
But I mean, you don't think about it, but like interesting is a non-word. It's a word that you use because you're afraid to say something else that you actually think.
Or you haven't had time to process exactly, you know, what you feel about, you know, what you're, you know, experiencing, basically.
Yeah.
It's evocative of something, but you just haven't pinned it down yet. And then he gets her to talk to, you know, describe that. Yeah.
Because interesting is basically processing interest. Like that's all it is. Just processing interest. Like, what is it that sparked something? Exactly.
That's what interesting means.
This movie is like a lot about communication, and because they do effectively communicate in some ways, this family, and they effectively communicate, but then also they don't, because like, I don't know, it's almost like they are not able to process, there's not a lot of emotion.
Yeah, well that's what, you know, I was going to, you know, get to, is that like with this movie, like the way they communicate is that meme, you know, technically correct, the best kind of correct. Right. Because there's that scene where this young, well, you know, they talk about Lolita. That book, you know, has a lot of sexual connotation to it. And so, you know, she, you know, this girl, you know, she's asked, you know, like, what's sex? And he's like, well, it's when a man puts a penis in a woman's vagina, and then, you know, a sperm comes out, and, you know, a very clinical explanation of it. And she's like, well, why would a man ever do that? And he goes, well, because it feels pleasurable. And, you know, sometimes a man and a woman, you know, want to have children together, and that's the way that you fertilize the egg. And she goes, but that's where a girl pees. Well, no, not technically. Technically, a girl pees through her urethra, not through her vagina. And so it's like, and then, you know, later on, you know, that's what Bo says. He you know, if I hadn't read it from a book, I don't understand it. You know, that's the only way that they know about the world, because they've never really been a part of the world. They've never experienced the world. They've only experienced that little camp and what they read through books, but they don't have any emotional context to what they're getting.
Yeah.
You know, so Yeah. So, you're talking about how there's no emotion or no feeling. You're like, that's why, there's no emotional context to all. They have the information, but they don't feel what that information means.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean it's instilled because Ben the dad is so practical almost,
Yeah.
logical. Like he wants his kids to know how to survive in the wilderness and with complete independence.
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing for him, and he's very like don't hold punches, like very brutal on his kids because he wants them to be survivors and like highly intelligent. Basically, like I've been listening to Stephen recommend Hardcore History, and basically there's like the main guy Dan Carlin. He talks about the Spartans and how they were almost like an experiment, like a sociological experiment to create the greatest warriors. And basically in this movie, Ben Viggo Mortensen's character is kind of like creating a sociological experiment to see if he can create a family of like hyper intellectual, like basically the perfect human beings. Like he wants them to be like immortalized philosophers.
Philosopher kings.
That's what he even says. Yeah. I mean, it's very interesting, but he lacks that emotion because he's so practical and he's so clinical at it. It's really interesting. Like I think about the scene whenever they're all climbing a mountain side, with the ropes and stuff, and they're all, they're doing well. It's apparently just rained or something, but and each has their own rope, I believe. And Rel, the one who has the most beef with Ben, he slips and slams his wrist into the side of the mountain, and immediately gets like absolutely no sympathy. It's he's like, Rel, stop, think STOP, and basically it's like strategize all this like steps to like making good decisions when
strategize. Well, I think it's like stop, think, observe, and something else.
Plan.
Okay, yeah.
Stop, think, observe, and plan. Yeah. And it's like steps to making good decisions, but it's like zero empathy, zero pity or sympathy or any emotional like connection.
Yeah.
And he's like, he gives him no help other than to just give him that advice. And he's like, no one's here to save you. No one's gonna come out of the sky and get you onto the top of that mountain. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's just a really important scene, I think.
Yeah, and well, that's a thing I can relate to because as I've said on this podcast before.
Yeah, we just talked about Big Jake in the last.
Well, my grandfather. I've worked for my grandfather. I started working when I was 13 years old. He made me work 60 hours, only paid me for 40, and told me I was lazy.
Wow.
And like the reason why is because his father died, and like so he felt like he had to take care of them for a while. And so growing up, he had me working so young because he's like, well, what happens if your father dies? What are you going to do? What are you going to do for money? How are you going to take care of your mother? I was 13 years old and I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. It's my mom's job to take care of me, and
Right.
And so, because he was the man of the house at that time, and because child labor was a much different thing back in the 20s, and also gender roles, because even, I'm my father's only son. So there's my grandfather. He had, 2 sons and a daughter, and I'm the son of his eldest son. So I'm his oldest son. So I'm the oldest son of the oldest son, but I have 2 older sisters. And it's like, oh, you got to take care of your sisters. And I'm like, my sisters don't fucking listen to me. They're older than me. They can get jobs themselves. Why can't they get jobs? Why do I have to take care of them? And, it's because that mindset, oh, well, women don't work in the workplace. It's like, well, they do now. I mean, so that was how I was trained growing up. And so my grandfather, I'm 13 years old working at this store. All I'm doing is, putting up shelves and, cleaning and shit. I don't know anything about auto parts. They don't train me. Right. They expect me to just know shit, without telling me. So I'm just doing the best I can. And, it's funny because, I would work hard, right? And then there'd be nothing to do. So I just sit around and so, oh, why are you sitting around? Don't you have work to do? You get mad at me for doing my job too well. Yeah. So then that's when I learned, don't do your job too well. You got to meter it. So
that's something I still have to learn.
Yeah.
Me too.
I'm trying way too hard at my job.
I know you are.
I learned young and hard. And then, he didn't teach me to run the store. He didn't teach me how to manage the store. He didn't teach me, not that I wanted to know anyway.
True.
But it's like
take the initiative at least,
Yeah. Yeah. So, whenever I think about that training, because he's training them how to, kill things, hunt and, all that other stuff. I think about this movie, Kung Pao, Enter the Fist. And, that's a take off those Chinese movies. And, the trip in those Chinese movies is, the guy comes into the Buddhist temple, and asks for training in martial arts. And they teach him how to be this great big hero. Mm-hmm. But then there's this one character there. And they call him Wimp Lo. And the master says, pay no attention to Wimp Lo. We purposely trained him wrong as a joke. And that's how I feel how my life is.
Damn. Wow.
What about you, Sierra?
I mean, I didn't get much training of how to do things. I'm the technical middle child of 4.
Okay.
Which I say that and people were like, that makes no sense.
Yeah.
And I was raised by a single mom. And I was a single mom, and then my oldest sister raised us essentially. And a lot of the time, my mom's thing was like, you guys are going to have to figure it out yourselves because no one's always going to be able to help you, yada, yada. Yeah. And, having an older sister who's she's only 6 years older than me. And then my other one's 4 years older than me. And then I have a brother a year younger than me. So we're all not too far in age. We're all growing together and trying to figure things out together. But a lot of times it was very isolating and having to figure out 1 + 1 by yourself kind of thing, and at a very young age, I became pretty hyper independent.
Okay.
Yeah. So by 8 or 9, I was doing my own laundry, doing all the dishes, cleaning up after my siblings and my mom and everything. And some of it was taught, some of it just through observation. But other than that, I would just learn through mistakes pretty much to figure it all out. And me and my other sister were talking about this the other day, and we were talking about how because we all have friends, and whether they still live with their parents or not, but they don't know how to do most things at all. And I'll tell people, I learned to do my own laundry when I was 8, and they're like, I don't even know what button to press on the washing machine, and it's just little things like that. And I feel like it has helped me a lot in life, so that I don't necessarily always have to, ask somebody for help. If I feel like I can figure it out, I will. Mm-hmm. But it also has definitely hindered me from doing many things. Because if I have to ask for help, I feel like I haven't tried enough.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
See.
And so with what was the boy that almost fell off the rail? So when he was falling, and his dad was not giving him pretty much nothing, and was no one's gonna be able to help you up that mountain, yada yada. It's just you're there, you are the father, you are right now the provider, the teacher. You're supposed to be teaching this thing, you know what I mean? And it's sort of that tough love aspect that really gets nobody anywhere.
Way too tough.
Way too tough, and it never really helps anybody at all. And it was just very polarizing, I think, to see it in film like that, where it's a dire situation. This kid probably saw his life flash before his eyes, you know what I mean? And he has a huge injury, and his dad was just pick yourself up, bucko. Yeah. It was just what?
Bootstraps. Lift yourself up by your bootstraps.
Exactly. It was crazy. I kind of rambled a little, sorry.
That's all we're doing. so it's okay.
Sorry, and then to go back really quick to their emotions. I feel like the children, they're raised to be sort of emotionally inept, but their biggest emotions they have are unmitigated anger, enraged almost immediately when they hear something they don't like. They'll go off on fascist capitalist bullshit, you know what I mean? Immediately, they just start they talk so quiet, but they're shaking with just the fury of the thought of anything. And then also just like unabashed joy. Like anytime they accomplish something, or when they're having their little campfire or whatever, and they're playing their instruments and everything like that, it was like they're howling. They're not even saying words at that point. They're just howling and screaming and just being so filled with joy. But it's literally on either side of the spectrum, just those big extremes. Those are the only feelings that they feel. Is what I've noticed.
They're definitely unfiltered. And there's that kid who's like, "Hey, gotta have clothes on when we eat." And then the dad does it himself.
Yeah, he's just balled out.
Yeah, everybody's got. Well, you've all seen one. Yeah, that's what he says.
I also wonder though, like when I saw that scene of him on the I don't know. Sometimes I agree with you, but I also don't like. Like I feel like I've been coddled too much, and I was the kid who, I barely know how to do laundry. You know what I'm saying? I still live with my parents, and I know how to work at a job. I know how to do certain things.
Yeah.
But I feel like I've been coddled way too much, and I wish someone also had let me make mistakes.
Yeah.
And let me fail and figure it out for myself. So that I wouldn't, because now I'm afraid of mistakes. I'm so afraid of mistakes. And, that doesn't help me now. So it's like, I saw the kid struggling and I was like, wow, that's, it's kind of, it's the ultimate extreme, but, it's something I also wish I had in part, that sort of tough love. And I mean, I had it some ways, but not really. I don't know. So I it's interesting though, because like Ben, right? He's the extremist.
Yeah.
He's completely extreme, and that's kind of his character. And a lot of the things he is saying and the things he is doing, he has good points and good reasoning behind them. However, he has no balance.
Yeah.
He has no balance, and it's all logic, no emotion.
Yeah.
And it's completely off base in a way. It's on base but off base.
That's the whole thing. That's like what I said. Technically correct.
Right. Exactly.
He's technically correct. But it's not helpful.
Yeah.
Or it's downright wrong. And because one of the things I wrote down in my notes is we talk about these movies a lot, modernity versus tradition.
Yes.
But that's not what this movie's about. It's about extremism versus centrism. Because, like you said, he has no balance. He's totally extreme. He's totally extreme in that way. But the whole world isn't always like that. So, yeah, that's how I feel about that. Because he's not a traditionalist.
Right.
Yeah.
But he is, an extremist. And another thing I was thinking about, one of the conflicts in this movie is like, what is the job of a parent? And, a parent's job is to raise their children to not need their parents. And, technically correct. That's what he's doing. But, his grandfather, the children's grandfather, Ben's father-in-law, has a point in that, well, you're not raising them to be in the real world.
Exactly, yeah.
Because they don't need to kill a deer by hand.
Right.
In order to survive in the real world. Because, so they're driving from the Pacific Northwest to like Arizona, maybe?
New Mexico.
Okay, to New Mexico. And so they need food. So they stop the bus and then, they go out. They look for animals to kill.
Yeah, they stop by the road and, the daughter is has her bow drawn and is pointing it at just a random sheep.
Well, a herd of sheep.
A herd of sheep in a fence.
Yeah. It's a herd of sheep. So it's like fenced in and taken care of, and it's not out in the wild or anything. Yeah.
And she's not able to take the shot. And he's like, "What's taking so long?" And she's like, "They're just sitting there."
Yeah.
And he looks all harumphed. And they go back to the van, and they're driving more, and then the little kid speaks up, "I'm hungry," and he's like, "Well, you wouldn't be hungry if someone had killed the sheep."
Yeah.
And it's just crazy. And so then they stop by, like a convenience store.
The diner.
They stop at the diner first. Yeah. And, they sit down and they're looking at it and they're like, "Oh, wow, they have hot dogs. Oh, wow, they have burgers and fries. Whoa, what is all this?" And he's like, can we get pancakes? Can we get pancakes? And then Ben just, no, fuck this, we're leaving. There's no real food here. And they're like, why? He's like, there's no real food here. And so then they leave, and then they go to the convenience store.
Yeah, they go to the grocery store, and that's where they do mission free the food.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, while Ben fakes a heart attack, all the children, steal a whole bunch of food.
Yes. And then they make it back to the bus.
Yeah. And now they don't need to steal the food because we just had a scene where they're in the bank and he gets money, so he could have bought the food. But, power to the people, stick it to the man.
Exactly.
That's why they steal the food. And that's when we learned about Noam Chomsky Day.
Yes. Oh, go ahead.
It's something to say also, because I feel like more than anything, like all the kids at some point throughout the movie, they've been like, yeah, I mean, why can't we do this? Why can't we go here? Why can't we eat this? Yada yada. And the dad is just like, he gets like frustrated and angry each time, but it's less out of just like annoyance. It's almost like fear. It's like he's like a wild animal so terrified of domestication.
Yeah.
And it's like, because I really had to think about why this man gets so angry, like anytime his children are like curious about anything outside, of their camp or outside of what they're always taught. He always, he pretty much tells them to like, question authority, ask questions, be curious, pretty much is like the lessons of like, extremists or, anti-establishment. But the second they question him, he just starts and he like draws in and he acts out pretty much. And that's kind of what drove like the climax of the film.
Mm-hmm.
And then once he actually scares himself is when he finally he finally opens up a little bit, I feel.
There was that scene with Rel where Rel was like, hey, why are we celebrating Noam Chomsky Day? Why don't we celebrate Christmas? And then Ben is like, well, you want to make an argument? Well, make your point and we'll all discuss it. And, he makes it sound like he's being rational, but what it really is it's intimidation.
Yeah.
Because Rel knows that all of the other kids, they're not going to buy into, what he's talking about because they're so involved with their father. And
that's all they've been taught.
Yeah. And they've only been taught by him. So they don't have anybody to compare him to. Right. That's another thing. Like that's another problem with isolation that way. So, they don't know how bad he is,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just freaking cool.
Yeah.
That's part of the play. Like, whereas, like, communication, like, even the dad, I don't think, realizes, like, what he's doing and what he's unable to communicate, his emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And with that Rel scene, it was like Rel... It was both that he had no chance of standing up for himself because everything that they would throw at him he has nothing to throw at them because he has only been taught what they've been taught and maybe like what he's heard to the outside.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so he has no way of logically fighting against it because he has nothing outside of it. All he has is the feeling that something isn't right here and something is off and he feels left out.
Well, it's not just that. It's also that even if he did make points, well, they're just going to come up with their own points and that they'll never agree to. Even if he had the knowledge, they're so ingrained to their father's way of thinking that they still, like he says, oh, well, we'll think about it, but they're not going to think about it. And so, that's kind of Rel's character arc is, him trying to break free of his father. And we first see that when he breaks the news to them and he says, Mommy died. Nothing will change. We will go on living the same way. We're a family. And
first he like comes in and he says, your mom killed herself or something like that, right?
Because he was like, your mom killed herself. She finally did it. That's what threw me. I was like, so you've been waiting? And that kind of threw me. Sorry to hop on. But like the finally, what? Like that kind of threw me off a little bit because then throughout the movie, he's like, Ben has like this sort of like internal like fight with himself because Rel keeps telling me he should have done more to save mom.
Yeah.
And of course Ben's in-laws are saying the exact same thing. And he's just like, well, I did what I could, and or maybe you're right and whatever. But it's almost as if like he knew it was going to happen anyway. Just that finally. Like she finally did it, and then he has the whole life's gonna go on, whatever. It's like he's already been mentally preparing for this moment because he knew there was no way of saving her.
Well, it's also probably happened before,
Right.
And they were able to stem it or what have you, because she was mentally ill, she was bipolar. There's no way that she was getting the adequate treatment she needed for that out in that camp. Finally, it got too much for her. So yeah, he saw it coming way before. But because of their lifestyle and their ideals, they didn't do enough to stem that off. Yeah.
And I think again with the finally, because he had mentioned when they're at the dinner with the aunt and the cousins or whatever, and the cousins are asking questions, and the parents are like, and then
I
Ben,
love that part too.
and then Ben like tells them like she was mentally ill. She she had postpartum. Extremely bad after the last kid or something like that, and then she was also like manic depressive and whatever. And they have how many, like 6 kids?
I forget.
Yeah, 6.
Yeah, like 6 kids, right? So because he said like her postpartum got like really bad after the last kid, so I feel like
I think it was after Bo, which was the first kid.
was it after Bo?
Is that what he said?
Was that
I think it was after Bo because it cut to him.
Oh gosh, well then that's worse then, because that's
Bo's the oldest.
yeah, because that's 6 kids. She already had awful postpartum after the first one, and then consecutively, I don't really know the age difference between all the children, but that's like a long time, and it can progressively get absolutely worse, and especially if you're already manic depressive, that's just like it's so volatile, so it's terrifying.
Yeah, I think Bo must have been like around 18, and I think the youngest one was 8, because that's what he said when he brought the youngest child in to talk about the Bill of Rights. So they were throughout 10 years she had these kids, but for 18 at least, she must have been suffering.
Yeah. It's so wild, and I don't know if you guys want to keep going on that part, but to circle back again to communication, for the first few minutes of the movie, like most of what they're saying to each other is like incredibly like weird metaphor. Like the first words are like after Bo kills the deer and eats the heart, whatever, he's like the boy has died and now comes a man or whatever. And then for a while, we're seeing them in their little camp or whatever, and it's like this metaphor here, or they're asking about like this giant thing to like this like 10-year-old, quantum physics and all this stuff, and it was really strange watching them communicate, because it's like it's showing like they're on a completely different level than like basic
Normal people.
I would say normal, normal people pretty much. But then there's also just a huge there's a clear detachment from not only just like from like the world, but from each other as well, because they're only seeing each other like they're family, but they're also gonna have to learn to be independent from each other. So it's almost like, I don't even know. It's like exploring their skills and communicating with their skills rather than like communicating as people, if that makes any sense.
Well, that's when we get into when Bo meets Claire.
Right, exactly. Yeah, for sure.
Do you want to talk about that, Dan?
Yeah. Oh. Sure. Oh boy. Just like it's very close to home.
Yeah,
oh, okay.
For
Well,
sure.
how could it not?
Yeah. This whole movie is very
Being
close
awkward when you're young, that happens to everybody.
to but also
I have my own stories too, which I won't say.
I'm sure you do. But also like growing up with hardcore Christian, is just like it's very very much like sex is like the devil's playground.
I know.
Yeah, but like you had HBO. I didn't have.
Yeah, but
HBO was the devil too.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's true. But I would still raise, hey, you love a girl, marry her right away, and make her give you a baby.
Yeah, I'm sure. But like,
Yeah.
I was terrified of sexuality in general.
Okay.
Completely. Yeah. So, anyways, but Bo is they stop at a trailer park. Because they're in their bus, which is the vehicle they use. It's like a camper bus converted into like a living space.
They name it Steve.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
That's so funny. I didn't realize that. That's so funny.
Yeah, they refer to it as Steve. They don't say the bus. They say, "Hey, stay in Steve."
That's so funny. I just thought.
Catch that.
Yeah, I didn't catch it either. Anyway, so they're at the the trailer park, and everyone's had some free time, and Bo is stretching in the grass,
Doing yoga. Yeah.
and there's a girl around his age watching him, and so she starts talking to him, and
Well, she's smoking a cigarette.
oh yeah, she's smoking a cigarette, wearing like leggings and eyeshadow and stuff.
Yeah.
Leggings and eyeshadow and stuff.
Yeah.
Soup's edge.
And so she's talking to him, and I don't remember exactly how the exchange went, but she's like, what are you doing? He's like, yoga. It's supposed to connect, your mind to your soul, or what, like stuff like that. And she's like, well, does it work? And he's like, he has no response, basically. Mm-hmm. And then they start hanging out, and they start actually having conversations. They're sitting in the pool with their feet in the pool, and they're talking about his background. She's like, what are you doing here? And, well, she first asked, what type of music do you like? And he's like, I'm really fond of, I think it's Bach or something like that. And
but like a super specific Bach version of Bach made by this particular composer,
interpreted by this other musician. Oh, I also like the Yo-Yo Ma's interpretation of, especially on the cello or whatever. And so, and she just like laughs it off. And then she's like, well, what brought you out there in the first place, and kind of stuff like that. And so he's like, my dad was writing a book on Dr. Spock. And it's like, he's like a child psychologist, Dr. Spock. And basically, I think that was the start of their, secret sociological experiment in the woods.
That's right. I didn't pick that up until just now.
Yeah. But she's like, oh, Dr. Spock, no, he's from Star Trek. And he's like, oh, yes, I love that I love that. And he's like, yeah, the TV show. And he's like, oh yes, that show is awesome.
Yeah.
And then eventually they start like making out.
Well, she asked about his mom.
Oh, that's
yeah.
right.
And then he's like, oh yeah, well, she just worked for the government and it was a secret, and so like I can't tell you. And it's like, so obvious that he's lying, but it's like he doesn't know how to, he knows that if he tells her the truth, it's going to isolate her. She might make fun of him, just like those girls, from before. And so, he tries to lie to her, but he's like so inept, he doesn't know what kind of lie to tell her that she would believe.
Yeah.
Right.
That's how disconnected he is from her.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he goes with almost the old, if I tell you, I'd have to kill you kind of thing.
Yeah.
But he's serious about it. I mean, he didn't say that, but he's like, I've told you too much already.
Yeah.
And
she just laughs it off.
Yeah.
Oh, you're cute.
Yeah.
And then they start macking.
They start macking it, getting
Hard.
hot and heavy, bruh.
Bro, just so much. Like, he was breathing so hard.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
they both were.
Like, I understood why, but like, homie was like heaving.
It reminds me of that moment in Forrest Gump when Jimmy takes her top off in front of him. He's like, oh, so I think I made a mess on your roommate's bed sheet.
Oh my God. I don't remember that part.
Bro, it's
Best part of
Maybe
the movie.
gosh.
Yeah. So they start macking.
Yeah.
And she's like, I know a place we can go, but you have to be quiet. And so she starts leading him away, but she, for some reason, leads him right past the front door of her camper trailer or whatever. And her mom is like, what are you two up to? You lovebirds better not be doing what I think you're doing. Don't you? You should be getting home to your dad. I'm sure he's worried about where you are right now or something like that. And she's like, what have you guys been up to? And, Bo was like, oh no, I've been caught. And so he like looks back at the girl, looks back at her mom, and gets down on both knees or one knee and starts basically professing his love for the girl. And, you know, he's like, he's basically saying, like, why he wants to marry her almost.
Well, it's weirder than that.
It's weirder than that.
Oh, okay, because before, you know, they get pulled over by a cop who, you know, needs to tell them, you know, that their tail light is out.
Oh, that was a great scene.
That was a great scene.
Yeah. But, you know, he's looking and he's like, oh, well, isn't it time for school? You know, why aren't your kids in school? And so, you know, he gets suspicious. And then that's when Bo, like, goes in about this thing about how they're, you know, homeschooled and, you know, Christian evangelicals. And then they sing that hymn and it totally creeps the cop out. And so he just leaves. So, you know, you think he's going to, you know, think on his feet this time. And he's like, your daughter has awoken something in me that has released endorphins in my brain that has swum through my bloodstream like dolphins.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're right. Yeah. He's like, and she, her soul or whatever, she has penetrated deep inside of me, and I have penetrated deep inside of her. Oh, but not in that way. And he's like, but maybe one day, I'm sure, if we want to, if you want to, and if we want to, and maybe we'll have kids because I would like to have kids, but that's something we could talk about, and that's something we both need to decide and talk about, because I feel like it's a decision we should both reach, and we should talk about that. And I think that we would make a great life partner, and basically yeah.
Claire, what's your last name? And you know, she says, yeah, Claire, will you marry me?
That was so funny. Oh my gosh. It was like a mirror to you, honey.
It was, because literally,
not just to you. I'll put it to you that way.
Oh wow. Okay.
I learn so much about you every time we get together, and it's just so great. It's like having a little like Russian nesting doll. Pull the head off of each one every time.
I told you guys about Moby.
You did.
Oh, yeah.
You did. Oh boy. Wow.
I'm sorry. Oh god, that was so good. I forgot about that.
Yeah, well, that's basically what happened when I started dating Sierra. There was a long conversation, probably till like 3 a.m. Basically, I asked her to marry her before I even asked her to date me.
So these conversations would start around
9, probably.
like now to say like 8:45, 9 o'clock. We wouldn't get off the phone till about 3:45 in the a.m. And this was between November 1st and probably February 10th.
Okay.
Yes, so it was like almost nightly, and he was really grappling with it. And I mean, and understandably so.
Yeah.
I would never, you know, at least now I would never make fun of you for it. At that point, I was like, bro. But I like understand a lot of like why you were very hesitant and wary, scared, whatever, all of it. Especially because, and I say this a lot when I talk about us, like we very different upbringings.
Super different.
Really different upbringings. And it was a lot of like, yeah, so if we get together, like I'm not just dating to date, like we have to get married. So essentially if we're dating, we're going to get married and it's settled. And I was like, I'm crazy for you? Absolutely. and then there was like talk of children even before we were even trying to get together yet. Like we started talking about November, and then by end of December, he was like, so children, how many? I want a soccer team. And it was just like these big, huge conversations.
Yeah.
Before anything really kicked off.
Because I'd never had a girlfriend at all. So it was a huge, like I was not allowed to date in high school, and, you know, just super protected in that way. And like, yeah, I was supposed to date a Christian who was very similar to my upbringing, basically. And and I didn't do that.
Yeah.
You did the complete opposite.
I said, you thought you knew my next move?
Bro, you're supposed to marry like the next like Mother Teresa. You married the whore in church. Like
no.
Go for Mary, Mother of Jesus, not Mary Magdalene.
So anyways, that part was hilarious to me. It called me out in a weird way that I'm sure not everyone got called out in that way.
Oh, I think more than you would think. For
Okay.
sure. Because I mean, when we're young, we have an idea of what's expected. We have an idea of what might be normal, and that's normal. You go and you find someone you like, you marry them, and you have kids. Especially now, this is when we can get to tradition versus modernity. Especially back in the day when women didn't have a place in a workplace or career where they had to rely on men to earn for them, so they needed to get married just to have their own income, basically. And that's when you get to like things like arranged marriages where they don't meet out of love or anything. They meet, just so they can both have somebody. And then, there's that interaction. Well, we're taking care of each other, not because we love each other, but because that's our job.
Yeah.
Young people, that they kind of have that, idea. And then, some people date and figure out that's not how it works. And some people don't date until they do date and then figure that out. That doesn't happen. You got to date for a while. You got to figure out who you are, and then who other people are, and figure out your own wants and needs, and all those things, and that takes time. For some people, longer than others. Yeah,
So that was a crazy part, and the cool part, and interesting part.
Yeah,
But that was a good example. Claire was kind of another example of what normal people are like in a way. She was the sort of reality check to Bo, but she was a reality check like more than like she was able to talk to him in some way, and he was able to talk to her more than like the girls at the market who laughed at him.
She dug him. She was ready to make out and do more with him, and it was also great because like even though he did that stuff, both Claire and her mom were, oh, you're cute.
Yeah.
They waved him off when they left, and it looked like sincere.
Yeah, you'll see
like,
him.
bye.
You'll see her in the morning.
Right.
and then the bus drives away. You see,
That was so. Like I felt so
Bo's
bad
in the
for
back
laughing.
window. Just
I felt so bad for laughing because he looked so really like so upset.
I know.
Like it was one of the most genuine like emotional moments from Bo at least till that point. That wasn't like anger or joy. It was just like he was like stuck. Like that was like him being stuck right there, and I felt so bad for laughing because it was hilarious.
he just had like a hand on the window and just the most dead inside face just staring at her.
Yeah.
And she's like, waving like, oh, trying to be cheerful, and he's just dead inside.
Yeah.
Like he really like had the emotion of like a ASPCA commercial. Like it was devastating.
Puppy dog eyes. Like
Yeah.
he looked like a puppy when the family leaves the house, and he thinks, "Oh no, my family's gone, and they're never gonna come back."
Like
That's how much. Yeah, that's how much deep sadness he portrayed.
Not to go off topic or out of order, but I was just thinking because of course the motif of like tradition and what that means depending on who you are, how you grew up, and everything. But there's also like within tradition, there's also ceremony, and how like that plays a huge role in this movie, like incredibly. Like the first scene, you know what I mean, is it's ceremonious.
Yeah.
Like it's tradition, they go out and hunt their stuff, but then ceremony, eating the heart and all that stuff. Tradition, they all, read crazy books and all the stuff, whatever. And then when it gets to the mom, like being dead and having to go to her funeral and everything, it really like even though the both worlds, like the anti-establishment we established, they in like just hearing it, there's like a lot of like butting heads, you know what I mean? That's when it really starts to butt heads, when they actually have to be like face to face with each other, and then that's where you really see the very sharp like divide between ceremonies, between how Ben raised his children and then how Ben's wife had grown up, pretty much, and it's also another thing of like how both sides are technically right.
Yeah.
They're both sides are super valid, in how they want to do things. But in them trying to prove how valid they are, they also sound awful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought it was just hilarious that the mom wanted to, be cremated and then flush down the toilet, the most public area possible. And then her parents were like, I'm just going to put her in the ground. Like, it's like...
Yeah, but, the thing... So what you're alluding to is that the in-laws basically have control of her body, so they're going to give her a Christian funeral and then bury her in a graveyard. But her will says that she wants to be cremated because she's Buddhist and poured in the toilet. And Ben's father-in-law says that if you come to the funeral, you're going to be arrested.
Yeah,
that's the danger there. And at first he wasn't going to go, but then his children pressured him. He said, live by your ideals. Power to the people, stick it to the man. And so they begin the journey with that idea, and then they basically crash his daughter's funeral in a church, and then it's time to take the body to the graveyard. But before he turns into the graveyard, Bo tells him, don't go because they can't lose him as well as their mom. Yeah, what you're saying is that, Ben wants to abide by his wife's wishes, which is, to be cremated. The father-in-law and mother-in-law, they're going to give, what they expected her, what they raised her to have, which is a Christian funeral. But the other thing is that their daughter was mentally ill. So it then brings up the question, was she in a right state of mind to demand that that's how she wanted her body to, how she wanted her remains to be handled? Was she of sound mind when she did that?
Right.
I think that puts a level of ambiguity in all this, if you think about it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And like even just going back to like the ceremony of like a funeral, the traditions within the ceremony of a funeral, like watching it, I was like, this looks normal, and I would understandably it's frustrating, when no one's abiding to your will and everything.
Yeah. But
if they do have control of her, of course, I couldn't do anything about it. If they want to put her underground, put her underground. And it's another thing, like when they read the will and she said she wanted to be cremated and thrown into a toilet. And it was just like, oh, there's so much freedom in your death that it's so crazy. You never really think about that because, especially if you're grown up, Catholic, Christian, whatever, there's like certain ways to do a burial or to do a funeral or a homegoing, whatever you want to call it. But when there's like no parameters, you can do whatever you want. I just found it interesting just because again, it's like, you show one side here, but when they are met in the middle, it's really like, even you're having like your own personal tug of war watching it. It's just like, well, like who is right, who is wrong, is there a right or wrong, like who can say? The person that could say is dead, so so it's kind of just like it's your own internal conflict.
She may not have been of right mind, so she couldn't may not have been in the right space to choose for herself.
It was just interesting because it's like both groups everyone needed to grieve, needed to process,
for sure.
And so everyone was trying to do it the way they knew how.
Yeah.
You had Ben trying to do it his way, which lined up much more with her way, and her parents needed to do it their way. The mom was like on the phone, and whenever she was talking to Ben in the beginning, she was like, she's in heaven now, and like you like she needed to believe that in order to be okay with the death, and so it's like, it's just crazy because like, what are you gonna do? Take away the way these people grieve in order to do it the right way, the way she wanted it, and it's just really interesting.
But it's also, it also shows like how far Ben will go to for his ideals.
Yeah.
He believes in people's freedom to choose that. That's what his wife chose, as as much as he knows, and so he's going to do his damnedest to do it, despite the power structure preventing him. Yeah.
And you can just tell because he's so angry as he's driving to the burial site. He's so upset, and like I felt for him because it's like they aren't being just, like they're being selfish in a way because if that really was her will, I mean, because he had her will and testament in his hands and was reading it, and if it was her will, they just completely ignored it because it wasn't socially acceptable to them. But like. And you could just see Ben's anger at that because he wanted to do what she wanted to do.
Well, it's also a thing, though, is like, okay, well, Ben had the will. he could have hired a lawyer and then get lawyers involved.
Exactly.
And try to work it through that system. But because he's so anti-establishment, he's not going to hire a lawyer. He's not going to be a part of the power structure. He's going to try to handle it his own damn self. Which brings us to how his father-in-law handles things.
Right. He was quick with it too.
Yeah, because his father-in-law. So what happens is basically Rel runs away from his father to his grandparents, and like Rel says that he wants to stay with his grandparents and have a normal upbringing, and so Ben comes over to get him, and then the grandfather shoots an arrow at Ben, and it's like, yeah, don't mess with people's kids. But don't mess with the grandparents' grandkids. That's the lesson to learn there. Mm-hmm. So, and basically, the father-in-law says, hey, we think that you should give us custody of your kids because you're not raising them right. You're not raising them for the real world. Real wants to stay here. You're not teaching them how to, get jobs, all that. And so, he said, here's my lawyer, contact him if you have any questions, because we're going to take custody of your kids. So, his father-in-law is using the power structure that, we as society have decided that we're going to solve disputes rather than take the law into our own hands, which is what, Ben tried to do.
Mm-hmm. And you can tell that the father-in-law is rich.
Yeah.
He has influence, and he threatens, he calls the police officer, not the department, a specific officer.
He calls the police and he says, oh, who's this? Oh, and, calls him by his first name.
Yeah, and says, can you send someone over? I think I saw a prowler. And so then you see, after Ben leaves, you see the father-in-law shaking hands with the officer on the front step, like thanking him for coming by. And yeah, that's when, the shit really hits the fan.
Yeah.
Because Ben is not going to take, Rel's running away. So he sends, his daughter after rescue mission Save Belle or whatever, Rel or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So she's a good climber, and she's climbing the outside of the house, and she goes above the window where Rel is staying, and she's climbing down, but the stucco tile or whatever it's called breaks. She falls
Hard.
She falls hard.
Hard as shit.
And you can see
bad.
there's something cracked.
Yeah,
and
she falls down the roof, from the roof to the car, the top of the car, and then from the car to the pavement.
Yeah.
And
this is like an SUV.
Which,
so
if
she's
I-
like high off the ground.
Yeah.
Which, for reality's sake, it's better if you fall in a lot of things in that way. But
Because
still.
it slows down momentum.
Yeah.
Well, but
Yeah.
still, I feel like if you hit a lot of things and they're not too far distant from each other, sure. But she's falling from here to way further, like 10 feet, 5 feet. And she's going
And she
down.
falls hard.
Yes, obviously, yeah. I'm sorry, it's just,
I understand.
But she falls hard, smacks her head.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a crack.
And
then that's when Ben realizes, that's when he scares himself. That's when his whole world kind of turns over. And his ideals and stuff like that.
That's when he first starts to think, are my children better off knowing me or not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I'm doing to my children, is that healthy or not? And
How many movies have we done where that's one of the questions? Because
most of
this
the
one.
ends.
There's that one. There's For Ellen. What was another one? I feel like there's a third one.
Liverpool.
Oh, damn. What was the other one we watched?
It was Save Yourself.
Save
But
Yourselves.
that doesn't count.
Does it?
I don't think so.
I mean, that involves, yeah, probably not. No.
Well, they do have that baby.
They do have the baby.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Sorry.
You're going to choose Eraserhead next, aren't you?
I love Eraserhead. That's one of my favorite lynches.
That's what he says it's about. It's about being a parent.
Mm-hmm.
Damn.
Yeah. So yeah, one of his daughters, gets very, very close to seriously hurting herself, dying or
Or paralysis.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not that bad. And so basically Ben, makes a deal with his father-in-law that his father-in-law will keep the kids. And also kind of skirted past it before, but Bo applied to a whole bunch of colleges.
Ivy Leagues.
Yeah, Ivy League colleges. and he finally lets his father know about it. And his father says, "Oh, that's very impressive." But then he says, "It's not impressive that you got admitted to all these schools. It's impressive that you've been lying to me and that you haven't told me that you've done this or were wanting to do this." And so, yeah, like you said, Sierra, he starts to get mad. That it seems that his, oldest son is like going against what he said. He's like, how could you hide this from me? And Bo says, "Well, I did it with Mom's help." So apparently, it's that thing where. This might be modern and tradition too, because, usually as the patriarch, you're expected to do what your father wants you to do once you've grown from child to adulthood. But then if you're going to go your own way, you have to go your own way.
Right.
And, sometimes, at least in stories, mothers tend to be more sensitive about that. And, so that's why, she helped him, but also kept it from Ben as well. And he's saying like, yeah, I want to go to school because I don't know anything about, all I know about the world is what I've learned from books. And so he wants to go experience the world, by going to college. The father-in-law says, yeah, well, we'll pay for his college. The in-law says that they'll take care of everything. And then Ben drives off with Steve. And, he sees this big bus. It's all empty. And then he stops at a place and he gets a
beard trimmer. Or something.
Yeah, big clippers. And he, shaves off his entire beard. He's transforming himself into someone else. He doesn't want to be who he's been before. He wants to be, someone new. And, that's what a character arc is. He's now on the other side of his character arc. He is not the person he was at the beginning of the story anymore. Because the person he was at the beginning of the story was this guy who thought, he has all the answers. He knows how the real world works. He's going to teach his children, how the real world works. He's not going to compromise at all in that, but then he endangers his children. One of his children could actually die from it. He realizes that, and so now he's a person with self-doubt, and that's what that shaving of his beard meant. But then he goes back into Steve, and then we find out that it's he stops at a beach for the night, and then his kids come out.
Yeah, they've been stowed away in Steve.
Yeah.
As he's gone on this like journey away from his father-in-law and supposedly
it's like massive ego death essentially.
Yeah.
And so then but I wanted to quick circle back a little bit and go to Rel's character arc.
Okay.
Because I thought that was really interesting. So at the trailer park, Rel is alone in a basketball hoop, throwing rocks at the basketball hoop. And Bo, the oldest son, comes up and he gives him a rock to throw. And he's talking to Rel. And Rel's like, "You don't get it. You just think our dad is perfect and can never make mistakes. And he's right all along. But he killed Mom. He's the reason Mom killed herself. And he's lying to you. And he's a psycho, basically." That's when Bo goes back and tells his dad, "I got accepted into Harvard, all these schools."
It's funny because Bo gets the courage to do that from Rel.
Yeah. And so then Rel leaves and he goes and runs away and stays with the father-in-law. And that's whenever he's like, "Fuck you, Dad."
Well, at the beginning of the movie, when Ben, when Ben says that, tells the kids that their mother died, it's Rel, that grabs his hunting knife and he like he steps up to Ben and like growls at him, points it at his dad. You think he's gonna stab him for some reason because he's just so angry about it, but then he turns his anger to
a cupboard.
A wooden cupboard, and just starts stabbing that, and says, fuck you, I hate you, why did you have to die? And so it's now we realize now why where all that anger came from.
And so he basically says, I don't know when he says it, but he's like, "I overheard them talking. She didn't want to stay anymore," kind of thing, and things like that. And so then, Rel runs away, and he's at his father-in-law, at the grandpa. He's at his grandpa's house, and that's when he gains independence from Ben, his own way. And then, Ben has that realization what he done wrong. And he basically apologizes. I mean, not necessarily apologizes, but he admits what he did. He admits wrong to Rel. Rel is standing there listening, and Ben is having like a sort of group conference with his family outside of the father-in-law's house. And he's like, if you stay with me, I'll ruin your lives. And that's when he has that realization, and that's when he tells them that he's leaving them there.
Yeah.
So then Rel sees that that Ben realizes what he's done. Mm-hmm. So then in the end, they all come out of the bus. They all come out of Steve, and it was just really interesting because I feel like it was cool because Rel had that experience where he was able to overcome and realize that his dad was sorry, and then he was able to forgive him in the end. I just thought it was a really cool arc.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing that every kid at some point in their lives has to learn, is that their parents are human beings too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, they make mistakes too. And life and parenting does not come with a handbook. And your parents are just like you. Everybody, no matter their age, is just trying to figure it out themselves too, as best they can. Mm-hmm. And Rel has that realization when Ben is at the beach, by himself. And then all the kids come out. He says, I don't hate you, Dad. So...
Yeah. I thought that was a really cool arc.
Mm-hmm.
And then they go... This movie has a pretty long resolution.
It does, yeah.
But
it doesn't feel long. This movie doesn't really feel long once you get emotionally invested in what's happening. It kind of takes its time, but it doesn't feel long at any time.
No.
Yeah.
I really quick.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you want to summarize the resolution of the because I don't. I just want to speak on it because I really did like it, how it was done. So throughout the entire film has been a tug of war of, this way, that way. Mm-hmm. Ben's way, the world's way sort of thing. And majority of the conflict in the film is that really like butting heads and getting under each other's skin and everything. But by the resolution, it's like the most beautiful marriage of the two, and just like a cohabitation of two concepts. And I thought it was really, really sweet. I mean, they turned first of all, they have a house.
Yeah.
A cute house. Cute little farmhouse. Like the Van Girlies were going to love it.
Steve got turned into a chicken coop.
Yeah, Steve got turned into a chicken coop. And I loved that. I thought it was so cute because I saw like the big bale of hay outside. I was like, I don't know what they got going on. And there's freaking chickens. And the kids are out, harvesting. They have huge gardens and stuff like that. All the kids are coming in with their buckets of eggs and apples and leafy greens and all this stuff. And they're all sat down around the table for breakfast, and we don't really see quite below like chest level of like Ben or like the kid or anything. You just see that they're bringing stuff in and that's it, and they're all going to one side of the kitchen, and then we get like a slow pan down, and he's making bagged lunches.
Yeah.
And I nearly cried. I'm not gonna lie. He's making bagged lunches, and he's making sure everyone has everything that they need, and it's all stuff from the garden, whatever. And he's like, all right, everyone eat their breakfast. The bus is coming in 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, I wanted to cry. I was a mess. I was trying to hold it in. I was like, this is so great. Because you can see that he still is very much like nervous. And he doesn't really know. He hates that it's not like what he wants pretty much. But he knows it's for the betterment of his children, which is like, parents always have to do the ultimate sacrifice thing. They have to put their ego aside for the betterment of their children. And that's exactly what he's doing in this moment.
Yeah.
And he sits around, they're all around the table making breakfast or having their breakfast, and they're all doing homework and writing in their books or reading books. Mm-hmm. And Rel, it's very, also super quiet. All you hear is like, maybe spoons clinking, pages rustling, that's it. Rel is like serving his father breakfast. He's like pouring him his granola and the milk and the bowl and everything. It's very slight unless you're really like looking at it. It was very, very touching to see how their relationship kind of like finally made it to that point. And again, it's super quiet, which is a complete like almost an antithesis of like how they were in the beginning. When they're around the bonfire and they're hooting and hollering and all that stuff. And it lasts like it's silent for a while, for a very long time. Very long take. And it just, we all sort of focus on Ben's face, and he's at the head of the table, but like further in, I guess, perspective than the kids.
He's in the background.
Yeah, he's in the background. And you're watching him, he's looking at his kids, he's sipping on whatever he's drinking, and he keeps looking at the kids, looking at their homework, looking outside, and you can see he's having his, like, this thing in his head. He's just like, is this right? Is this okay? Am I doing the right thing? Like,
he's no longer in full control of them.
At all.
Yeah.
And I feel like even though he tried to prepare them for that. He didn't prepare himself for that.
Yeah.
And so that's him grappling with that. You know, they're actually going out into the world. You think about how he raised them, how that's going to work, all that stuff.
You know they're not going to school to learn things.
Exactly.
They're going to school to hang out with other kids.
Exactly. Yep, pretty much. Pretty much.
Can I jump into it?
Absolutely.
Sorry. This was like, so sorry.
No, please.
Right beforehand, so they have the funeral. They
Oh, you
dig up.
completely skipped over that.
It's fine. We do it all the
okay.
time. Yeah. The little kid is like, yeah, fuck this. We're gonna we're gonna dig up our mom and give her the burial that she demanded.
Yeah.
But it's funny because like you, Sierra, said before, they both need to get their own way, and so they both get their own way in this. The in-laws get their Christian burial, but then the kids sneak into this graveyard, dig up her grave, carry her body out.
Yeah.
They put it on Steve, and they the girls are putting flowers in her dead body as they drive off, to the coast, where they get her ready to cremate her basically on a pyre. Yeah, do you want to take it from there, Dan?
Yeah. So I won't talk about the funeral scene
Okay.
too long. But basically, Ben gives a really touching speech about how much he loves his wife.
Oh my God.
It's so
It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
You're almost crying.
I literally did. Can I say that line really quick? I'm probably gonna butcher it, but he's eulogizing her. First of all, he goes, "Hey, little bird, it's me," and that had already sent me. He's basically giving her the most beautiful eulogy ever, and then he pauses and he's like, my eyes are mine, these hands are mine, my mouth is mine, but I'm not. I'm yours.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me, bro? That was enough for me because we know that all of his actions throughout the movie are out of acts of love for his wife, but we never had a tender moment about him talking about his wife really until he's eulogizing her, and that just really just.
Life pro tip, male listeners. If you want to get a girl, that's the line to use. And don't wait till they're dead to say it.
No, really. Give up all of your autonomy to the woman first date, and that's it. And you're locked in.
It was a beautiful scene.
Yeah.
And beautiful, beautiful words. And I like, too, how he never says anything about spirit. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I still believe that there's souls and spirits.
Yeah.
But he doesn't say anything about the afterlife, anything like that.
He says what she meant to him and what, that's what he did. He just said how he felt about her, because funerals, I'm of the opinion that once a person's dead, they're dead. And, funerals aren't for the dead person. They're for the living people, for them to mourn. That's how he eulogized her. He just said how she related to him and how she related to him was that, she owned him. He gave everything to her. That's how I feel talking about people at a funeral should be, because go back to what that preacher said. Yeah. He didn't fucking know her. Exactly. He was like, oh yeah, I didn't know her, but I wish I did. Oh, she loved dogs.
Right. A lot of just I heard from somebody once that she picked up a penny. It was just very heartless.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. And then they make it to, I think it's an airport.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think we're told it's an airport. They're walking through the halls, and basically then we see them all. It's a super low shot, and they're all crouching down, looking down, and it's at the toilet.
Mm-hmm.
And
they all crowd into a bathroom toilet stall.
Yes, one stall, one giant stall, actually it's a small stall.
Yeah.
And Ben takes out a paper bag, and he dumps the ashes in the toilet. And then Bo is looking down, and then they're all very somber for a moment, and then Bo just starts laughing. Just cackling, and they all start kind of laughing, and then they just flush the toilet.
Yeah. The one kid's like, bye, mama.
Yeah, the youngest daughter is just flushes.
And then, they go to the gates.
Yeah, we find out what happens with Bo. Where Bo goes on from there.
There's another beautiful shot.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Whenever they're in the bus, and they're driving to the airport. Also, in Steve, in the bus, everything is shot almost through Steve's front mirror, so that we can see Vigo and we can see all the other actors in the back, all the kids. It's a really cool way they do it.
Yeah, I really like that.
Genius. And But basically, we see Bo in the back, and he's cut his hair. He shaved his head.
Yeah.
And Vigo's driving the bus, and he motions. It's so funny because like so much of Ben's stuff is nonverbal. But basically, he motions with his hand. He brushes his hand over his hair.
Ben does.
No, but Ben.
Yeah, Ben.
Yeah, sorry. As if to say like, oh, you've cut your hair. And Bo like smiles, and he touches his chin, as if to say, Ben, oh, you've cut your chin. You've shaved your beard.
Yeah.
And then they just like they smile at each other, and it's like this moment of understanding that like we've both just gone through a journey, and like I like got choked up a little bit. It's just so like beautiful. And then so they're at the airport, and they're sending Ben off, and Ben is like. Or one of the younger kids asks, why did you pick, what is it, Namibia or something?
Yeah.
Namibia, yeah.
And he's like, I just put my finger on a map. So it's interesting because he didn't pick any of the colleges, but he is choosing to go off on his own, try and find it in the world.
Well, it's like his father said, what can you learn from those colleges that you don't know already? Which may be true, but, being an adulthood, being an adult, it's like I said before, what is the job of a parent is to raise your kids so that they don't need a parent anymore. And so now Bo is going to go out and test that because he became an adult once he, hunted, that deer by himself. His father said, oh, you're no longer a child, you're a man. And now it's time for him to test that. And he does that by, just going out in the world and trying to live on his own without a parent, looking over him.
While we're talking about that, I was thinking like Ben really did raise his kids to sort of like, with like sociological concepts, but also keeping them from being out and like studying, society and stuff like that. So I feel like that's what Bo is doing while going to Namibia, because like real people, the Ivy Leagues, those aren't real people. Like they're fake people. And so to go elsewhere, outside of even the culture you don't even know yet, to go further outside of that, to really put those concepts into perspective, I think was like what Bo really needed to do. And I thought it was really great that was like written into his character.
Yeah.
Like as Ben is saying goodbye to Bo, there's like it's like it reminded me of the speech from Hamlet, like Polonius said to his kid.
Oh yeah. Like the to thine own self be true sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, it was really sweet though. It was I think it was a better speech than that in some ways. I mean, it was a weird speech in some ways, but I'm gonna say the part that I liked about the speech.
Okay.
The part that I think, or do you want to? You say the part that made you laugh first, and then I'll say my part. Go ahead.
You say it.
Okay, it's gonna be a long tangent, but so basically, he's talking to Bo, and he's like, basically, do everything I've taught you. Do everything I've taught you. Do this.
When you make love to a woman, be gentle and listen to her.
Yeah, and
even if you don't love her, still respect her.
Right, be respectful, gentle, and caring,
and dignify her. Or something
and with everything that he says, Bo goes, I know. Saying that Ben already knows the things that. Bo already knows the things that Ben raised him to know. And so like now he needs to go off and like learn those things that Ben can't teach him. That's basically, that's another way of looking at all this too. Yeah.
And Ben is like, it goes fast, savor it as much as you can, and live fast, don't hold back. Contemplate like death every day. This is this is all you have, and use it all you can. Savor basically. And then he says, and don't die.
Which I love. He was just like, do everything that I've like, remember all the things I've taught you, live to be your true self, but also like remember everything I taught you, but like don't die. Like at least do that for me. Like don't make me feel like I've killed you too. Like sort of thing. Yeah. Which I thought, I don't know if they meant for it to be that way, like interpreted that way, but that's how immediately I interpreted it. He was just like, please don't die.
Yeah, well,
I can't handle it.
Yeah, I interpreted it that way is because it's like he spent so much time preparing them for life, but he almost didn't even let them know that he cared about them.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. It was like, don't die. I care about you. I want you to be alive.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's another job of a parent too, is especially when they're young, is, make sure that these children don't kill themselves. Make sure they don't run out in the street, make sure they don't, stick a metal object in the, electrical socket, make sure they don't burn themselves on the stove or anything like that. Make sure, a parent's job is to make sure that their children don't die. But, once they become adults, that's on them now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But the reason I wanted to talk about that too is because, like, the savior line, like when I was watching the very last shot that we were talking about earlier, where he was looking at all his children, and it was like that peaceful quiet and that like clinking of silverware, writing of pens, and I saw him as savoring it.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
As looking at his kids, he looked at like each one of them. He looked out the window, and like there is all that things you were saying about that anxiety of letting go, but I think it was also just savoring it, and loving it, and then I think it's a long moment of silence, but you can hear audibly a deep breath from him.
Yeah, for sure.
And then like shortly after that, it cuts to black. But that's what I wanted. I that's how I saw the ending, was that savor, because the same thing he told his son to do. He finally learned how to savor it as well.
Yeah, for sure, because you can tell like at the beginning of the movie, like the training that he was doing, it was coming from a place of anxiety, where he was afraid for his children and wanted to make sure that his children were so prepared for the world that, they could hunt and kill and, steal if they ever needed to. But yeah, his character arc has taken him to a place where he doesn't need to worry about that as much. So, one quick thing I want to mention is Steven Zahn and Kathryn Hahn are in this movie.
I was going to ask if we could talk about that for a second. Because there's so much cast that's so familiar in many things, and all of them acted together in multiple things.
Yes.
And I don't know, because you haven't seen Step Brothers.
Not the whole thing.
No, I haven't seen it.
You haven't seen Step Brothers?
Oh,
No.
my God. Okay, so first
Why
of all,
not?
we're going to watch Step Brothers.
Okay.
Yeah.
But so Kathryn Hahn is in Step Brothers.
Okay.
And there was a moment in the movie where it's not really a spoiler, she's married, like, disgustingly, she hates being married to him, but married to Andrew Scott, I think is his name. I don't know.
Okay.
So whatever that guy's name is. I'm bad at actor names. I'm not like the two.
Okay.
And he loves doing this like a cappella rendition of "Sweet Child of Mine." There are two children in the back seat. Like the son is lead vocal. I think the daughter is like melody. And so is Kathryn Hahn, and then the husband is like drum solo, like, and it's one of the funniest scenes because you can see she's just so fucking mad the entire time, and he's just like, "You're not enjoying it. Get into it, babe. Get into it." And it's so ridiculous. And so in Captain Fantastic, when they're eulogizing the mom about to set her aflame on the pyre and everything, they start singing her favorite song, which happens to be "Sweet Child of Mine." Acapella. And I was wondering, because you could have sworn, I don't know why you have not seen Step Brothers yet. You seem like someone who has seen it multiple times.
I've watched other movies multiple times.
Fair enough. But like, I was wondering why I was the only person laughing, because I was trying so hard not to laugh. And I think I also hate that song, and Daniel knows I can't stand that song.
Okay.
So I think that's why I was laughing. I was laughing because of how freaking perfect it was that Kathryn Hahn's in this film with that song. And then there's like all those different other connections with other actors that have been in things together.
Yes.
And it's like so bizarre how that worked in this casting. Like, it's great.
Well, I know Kathryn Hahn mostly from Parks and Rec, where she's incredible. I also know Steve Zahn. Well, he's been in a ton of stuff. Some of my favorite things is that he was in That Thing You Do.
I love that movie.
Yeah, I love that. I saw it in the theater when it came out.
I don't think I've seen that.
Oh, it's a great movie. So I saw him in that, and he was also in an indie movie called Freak Talks About Sex. And he's basically talking about what kind of pleasure do women get from titty fucking. And that's the kind of comedic actor Steve Zahn is. That's the kind of thing you expect from him. And it's like in this movie, him and Kathryn Hahn, they're like totally dramatic. I mean, it's not like Tom Hanks in Philadelphia dramatic, but
Right.
it's like they portray, real people. And, it's great that they were able to show that, in this movie. And, since then, Catherine Hahn was in WandaVision, which she's got tons of accolades for. So
I've
So
loved
hot.
Steve Zahn for so long. So I watched Sahara a lot growing up, the Matthew McConaughey movie.
Yeah.
It was my brother's favorite, and
Okay.
I thought because it was my brother's favorite, it had to be my favorite.
you're right.
So I watched it
That's
a
such
lot.
a younger brother thing to say.
Yeah. Also, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, he was so fun.
He was so
have you
bad.
seen those
I love
movies?
that.
What is it?
Diary of a Wimpy Kid?
No.
That's very much
Please.
like my childhood age group.
Okay.
Like you grew up reading the books, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, like comic books type little young adult novel type things, and they're like comic books as well.
Graphic
they're
novels.
graphic novels.
There you go.
And they got made into a movie, and Steve Zahn is the dad.
Right.
And he's
He kills it.
amazing. He kills
He does
it.
kill it.
He's the best part of those movies. Him and a few. There's a few best parts of those movies.
Right.
I should make you watch one of these days.
Hey, if you want to choose one of those movies instead of a long movie where nobody talks in the snow, we can watch a Steve Zahn movie instead.
But also, he's an amazing actor.
Yeah.
He was in a movie called Speak, which I've heard a lot about, but I haven't
Okay.
seen. But I've heard a lot about it. He was also in. I've seen Uncle Frank, I think.
Okay.
No,
I wanted
not
to see
Uncle
that.
Frank. It's a movie about a horse. Oh, here it is. Lean on Pete. He was in that, and he played an insane guy,
Wow.
and he did amazing. But I'm saying that he's fantastic. I love
Yeah.
Steve Zahn. He's got range, and he was also in Dallas Buyers
I was
Club.
gonna say he was in Dallas Buyers Club.
Apparently, I haven't
Wow,
seen that
I,
movie.
Wow.
I don't remember him being in that movie. I've seen
I
it
only
multiple
watched that
times.
movie once. So.
I've seen it.
I think he was like Matthew McConaughey's friend before Matthew McConaughey's character caught AIDS. I think might have been when he played,
Gotcha.
but I'm not sure.
I
That
also
you might
love.
be right. Yeah.
I also love Steve Zahn from Suburbia, which is the Richard Linklater movie.
Okay.
I don't know if I made you watch that yet, but
No.
it's. I talked to you about it. I love Richard Linklater a lot.
Yeah.
He's made a few movies that are adapted from plays. He made Tape, which is adapted from a
Yeah,
play.
which I watch. Yeah.
And Suburbia, which is also adapted from a play.
Okay.
Steve Zahn has a hilarious character in that. But it's funny because there's a connection there, Matthew McConaughey and Steve Zahn, and then they were both in Sahara together.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's a weird connection. But anyways, I just love Steve Zahn.
Yeah. One thing I want to talk about, and I should have talked about it before, is I remember when this movie first came out, and there were trailers for it in the movie.
What, Captain Fantastic?
Yeah,
Yeah.
For Captain Fantastic.
Uh-huh.
I barely remember it, but from what I remember of the trailers, it made it seem like it was a quirky family travelogue movie. Kind
Exactly.
of which on one hand it kind of is, but it's also so much more. But I thought it was going to be Little Miss Sunshine,
Exactly.
and this movie is not Little Miss Sunshine.
At all.
No.
I was very because Daniel was choosing between this movie and another movie for today, and I was do not choose this movie. It literally looks like trash. And Daniel was like, this is a great movie. I've seen it. And I was like, I saw the trailer and did not like it because
Yeah.
it looked kind of annoying. It looked like they're trying to do another Little Miss Sunshine. And I had seen bits and pieces of scenes. People talk about the scenes in the film, and I was like, it feels like if it is anything like Little Miss Sunshine, this is gonna be a weird lull in the film. They needed something dramatic. I can skip this movie, and it was absolutely nothing like that. And I really, really enjoyed this movie.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Also, everyone did amazing acting.
I was like,
Yeah.
the actors are fantastic.
Viggo Mortensen,
Even the children,
amazing.
bro.
Even
Yeah.
the children. What is his name? We just talked about it. George
McKay.
McKay,
Yeah.
who was in 1917.
Yeah,
Amazing in this movie.
yeah.
Everyone did amazing. Everyone did fantastic. I have a man crush on Viggo Mortensen from this movie, and also what's the horse movie? Hidalgo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You didn't think he was fine in Lord of the Rings?
I didn't really get into Lord of the Rings that
You're
much.
crazy. I
I thought he was fine from Hidalgo.
As I started watching it, I was like, who's that?
My brother was too obsessed with him. I had to come up with my own favorite character. I couldn't pick Aragorn.
He was in. What's that? What's the one gangster movie?
Wait! I have a connection.
Okay.
So,
He was in Carlito's Way. Way back in the day.
guess what else? What Viggo Mortensen was in? What director he's worked with? I'll give you a hint.
Give me a hint.
One of the movies we've watched, he's worked with that director that I picked.
This is some movie nerd
One of
shit
the
I'm
movies
not
that you
into.
picked.
Yes, one of the movies that we watched on the show. Viggo Mortensen's worked with one of those directors.
Hold on. Well, we watched. Hold on. We watched Liverpool. We watched For Ellen. Who? Go ahead and tell me.
Liverpool. He's worked with the director of Liverpool.
Really? In what?
He starred in a movie called. I want to watch it. It's called like Wawa or like Wah. So look, he's the star. Viggo Mortensen helped produce it. And the guy who directed Liverpool directed it.
From Denmark to an unknown. Wow, that's weird. That looks weird.
It looks awesome. I've always wanted to watch it. Anyways, sorry. That's another funny connection.
That is so weird.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine.
Tangents.
That's going to happen as we, go along.
I kind of forgot we were on a podcast.
Okay, so I think we've got Captain Fantastic covered.
I think we do, but like,
yeah,
this movie is crazy.
We went so out of order, but we dissected every minute of this film.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
That's what we do every episode now. Yeah.
My goodness.
And like, I like that we do that though, but basically I just want to say this movie is insane. I love it so much, and also like, it's so like, what is it called? Validating.
Yeah.
As someone who has been raised like in a very sheltered environment, and having to come up with my own idea of reality, having to realize that my parents are not perfect, and it just like, it's a perfect coming of age movie and also just a perfect family movie. And
yeah, that's my feeling on it as well. Mostly as someone, from an isolated area, because, I grew up and I worked in the Glades, which is a swamp, and, there's limited opportunities there, which is why, it's not the best of places. And, this is me, trying to get out. So, join our Patreon.
Are we tithing now?
And yeah, that's all I'm gonna say about that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You want to say anything else?
Really quick.
Mm-hmm.
I just remembered in the film, because a lot of it is about identity, and all the kids' names are like these random, like, throw something at the wall and it sticks names, and they're all made up because like, their parents pretty much didn't want them to, like, they wanted to be their own people. They wanted them to be one of one. They did not want them to be compared to anybody else out there who might share the same name or anything like that. They wanted them to be their own individual person. And I dug the idea. For sure the dad is super extreme, but I like the idea of just having one of those like random ass wacky ass names, but not like a Catherine with 3 Y's or anything like that. Like just something else that feels like, you know what I mean? Like
Not a name passed down.
Not a name passed down. It feels strong, and it, even though, names don't necessarily, like, you don't have to identify by your name. Like, it's a name that you would want to be identified by. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that was it. That's it.
With that, I wanted to add on one last thing. Sorry,
That's
not
okay.
to like override it or
No,
anything,
please.
but to
The fifth one last
piggyback off
thing
of
in
it.
the show.
Yeah.
Each name he gave his kids, or they gave their kids, was unique, and something very early on in the movie, someone says unique, the word unique, and they're like they're arguing basically. And he's like, unique, is that modifiable? And they all say no. And I love that because it's like, it's so, you cannot modify uniqueness.
Yeah.
As soon as you do, it's not unique.
Exactly.
And that's something like I went on a tangent about like studying like random things. I'm trying to learn new things now. And so I was learning about like existentialism, and like one of the things is that like individuals are unique, and because of that, no individual can completely be accepted in a society if they are allowed to be their complete individual self.
Right.
Like if there is no compromise, there is no society. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know. I just thought that was
That's
really
the whole
interesting.
movie.
Well, that's what the movie's about,
Yeah.
especially from Ben's point of view, because he refuses to compromise with society, and he's doing everything his own way, no matter what society tells him. And his arc through this movie is dealing with the consequences of that. Facing his wife's death because she wasn't able to get the long-term medical care she needed, dealing with Rail's resentment of it because but also the isolation of his children from society and other people, and then Bo also dealing with the consequences of that because he doesn't know how to talk to a girl. All that. That's what this movie's about. And in the end, like you said, Sierra, he compromises. He finally compromises, but that also brings him happiness.
Right.
So, they're no longer unique. They've been modified, but they are happier.
Exactly.
And it doesn't take away their uniqueness.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
They are nonetheless special because of that.
Yeah.
Right.
They're nonetheless, they're not lesser people because of it. Yeah.
But I just thought that was interesting because it is true that uniqueness isn't modifiable, and like you shouldn't have to change people. Like it's just a balance again.
Mm-hmm.
Like you people should be allowed to be individuals.
Well, you say you shouldn't change people, and you're right. But the thing is, what was going on with the kids was that they wanted to change themselves.
Yeah, you shouldn't force people to change.
Yeah. Rel didn't want to be unique. Bo didn't want to be unique, and so Ben had to learn how to deal with that, how to allow their children to be their own individual selves by not being so individual, by being part of society. Yeah. That's one of the reasons why this movie is great.
Freaking awesome.
Also, I really love that Rel was literally like dancing to the beat of his own drum, literally from the very beginning. Which I knew you had like you had said those foreshadowing, but I love that so much because like that's his youngest son, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if the two youngest are both girls or like if one's a boy or a girl.
I don't know.
So I don't know. He's the second oldest son for sure.
For sure. So we have the oldest son and we have the younger son, and Ben is trying to rebel with Rel, and he's just like, please, can you just get with the motherfucking program? Like stop trying to oppose me. Like just get with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then out of like just fucking blindsided by Bo, and he's like, I got accepted to every single one of these Ivy Leagues, and I feel like that's when he sort of gets like smushed and sandwiched, and that's when the pressure really starts to hit.
Rel goes by the beat of his own drum. He does that at the beginning, and what does he do? He makes the entire family, go towards him, and that happens when Rel, runs away to his in-laws, and then that's the inciting incident that forces the family to compromise or to be. To force Ben to compromise, for his family.
But in the beginning, yes. But like whenever it's just Ben, Vigo, and the son George McKay or whatever, when they're just playing their own song, and it's just the two of them, and it's very somber,
that connection they have together,
very melodic and quiet, and then Rel comes along and starts beating out a completely different beat, but. He goes from like it's very somber, but he brings everyone happiness, even though even though he's defying his dad, he's also bringing everyone happiness in the end, which I think is exactly what you just pointed out.
Yeah, absolutely. I
just wanted to point out that they all are yipping with joy at the end of the song.
Yeah, for sure.
We ended this podcast 20 minutes ago.
This podcast will never end.
With that.
Oh yeah, you want to sign us out, Dan?
Yeah, I want to do that. I want to do that thing we did last episode.
Okay, do it.
So that was Captain Fantastic, and this has been Your Movie, My Movie. Now we'll have the awkward goodbyes.
Do you want to say with Dan and Steve?
With Dan and Steve and
Sierra.
Yeah.
Was I a good guest?
That's beautiful.
You were a great guest.
You're a fantastic guest.
Was I?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Would you call me Captain Fantastic?
Sure, Captain Fantastic.
Thank you. All right.
All right, guys.
Bye.
Toodles.
Take care.